Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. It wasn't supposed to be anything big. Just a casual dinner at our place, a few close friends, a couple of her coworkers, some wine, some laughter. Nothing extravagant. I'd grilled steaks out back, made a decent playlist, even cleaned up the patio lights she kept saying I'd forgotten to fix. I was trying. God, I was always trying. But looking back, I should have known something was off the moment she came down the stairs. She was dressed like she was going to a club, not hosting people in our backyard. Tight dress, bold heels, more makeup than usual. I didn't say anything. I never really did any more, not because I was afraid of her, but because I learned there was no good outcome to commenting. If I told her she looked stunning, she'd roll her eyes and accuse me of trying to butter her up. If I said nothing, I was inattentive. She poured herself her first glass of wine before the first guest even arrived. By the time the third couple walked in, she was on her second. Still holding it together, laughing, talking, making jokes, but louder than she usually was. She got this way sometimes. Just enough edge in her voice that it felt like anything I said could be turned into ammunition. I remember the moment it all shifted. We were standing around the table, her coworkers on one side, me and two of our friends on the other. I was telling a light-hearted story, nothing serious, about the time we got lost on that road trip through Colorado. I'd gotten the directions wrong. We ended up in the wrong town for a whole night. Everyone was laughing. Even she laughed, at first. But then someone said, "Man, you're lucky your wife didn't kill you for that." And she turned to me, held her wine glass out to the side, and said, "Are you kidding? He's always been stupid with directions." Then she tossed the glass at me. Just flicked it out of her hand like I wasn't even standing there. The wine missed, but the glass didn't. It hit the patio floor at my feet, shattered. Everyone stopped laughing. She didn't even flinch. Just looked at me like I was some idiot who had asked for it. I felt the silence hit the backyard like a wave. People stood there, not sure if they were supposed to laugh, look away, say something. I didn't say a word. I didn't pick up the glass. I didn't ask why she did it. I just turned, walked past everyone, stepped inside, grabbed my keys, and left. No dramatic speech. No yelling. No slammed door. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that makes people feel uncomfortable. The kind of quiet that says more than anything I could have shouted. I think one of her friends called out my name, but I didn't stop. I remember seeing her reflection in the sliding door glass, how she looked down, annoyed, like I was the one ruining the night. I got in my car and just drove. No destination in mind. No plan. Just headlights and long roads. That hollow ringing in my ears from the humiliation. My face was burning the entire time, not from anger, but from the deep, consuming shame. Shame that I'd let it get this far. That I was the kind of man who could be treated like that, and people around me would just sip their drinks and pretend it didn't happen. I pulled into a motel about 20 miles out. Old sign, flickering lights, $49 a night. I didn't even ask for a receipt. I laid down in that stiff motel bed staring at the ceiling fan, thinking about everything that led up to this. The snide comments. The cold shoulder. The way she'd started cutting me off mid-sentence like she was embarrassed to be seen agreeing with me. Like being attached to me in any way was some obligation she resented. I don't know how long I lay there that night, but I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I just kept replaying it, over and over. Her face. That moment. The glass hitting the concrete. The way she said stupid, like it was just a casual fact everyone already knew. And still, some small part of me hoped that by the time I woke up, there'd be a message from her. A voicemail. Something. An apology. Some sliver of regret. But the phone stayed silent, and that silence started to feel heavier than the insult ever did. The motel room was still dim when I woke up the next morning, even though it was almost 9 a.m. I'd slept maybe 3 hours, if that. My back ached from the lumpy mattress, and I could still smell the mildew clinging to the curtains. The kind of place people use when they don't want to be found. Or remembered. I reached for my phone before my eyes were fully open. No missed calls. No messages. I waited a few minutes, staring at the screen, half expecting something to buzz. A text. Where are you? Last night got out of hand. Something, anything to suggest she realized what she'd done. But it stayed still. Quiet. Like she hadn't noticed I was gone. I wasn't sure what that said about her, or what it said about me. I showered with the pressureless nozzle rattling against the wall and checked out without saying a word to the man behind the front desk. He didn't even look up. Maybe he didn't care. Maybe he recognized the expression I was wearing. Some things you don't have to ask about. I drove aimlessly, stopping for gas and then for a coffee I didn't drink. I parked in an empty lot next to an abandoned warehouse and just sat in the car, letting the engine tick as it cooled. That's when the messages started coming in, but not from her. It was Josh first. One of our mutual friends, someone I'd known longer than she had. Hey man, last night was rough. You okay? Then Julie, who'd helped organize the dinner. I think she was just drunk. She didn't mean it like that. And then the worst one from Erin, her coworker. The one who'd brought her boyfriend along and sat just across from us at the table when it all happened. She feels terrible. Give her time. I stared at that one for a long time. Not she said she's sorry. Not she wants to talk. Just give her time. Time for what? To figure out how to make me apologize for walking out? I didn't respond to any of them. I just sat there, trying to trace the last few months backward in my mind. Looking for where things had started to shift. Not collapse, just shift. That's how it always starts, isn't it? Not with some big betrayal, but with the subtle erosion of respect. There was a time when we talked about everything. When we couldn't wait to hear each other's thoughts. When I'd get home, and she'd meet me at the door, still in her sweatpants, eyes bright like she was waiting all day to see me. I didn't need grand gestures. That feeling of being seen was enough. But somewhere along the way, she stopped looking. Stopped listening. Conversations became complaints. Dinners turned into takeout eaten silently on opposite sides of the couch. I'd tell her something about my day, and she'd nod while scrolling through her phone. I chalked it up to stress, to routine, to the invisible fatigue that settles into long marriages like dust. But now I wondered if it had been something more deliberate. I thought back to a few weeks ago. We were out shopping, picking up a wedding gift for a friend of hers. I reached for a gift box and said, "How about this?" She laughed loud and said, "You seriously have no taste." Said it in front of the cashier. No smile, no playful nudge. Just flat. I remember standing there, holding the box like it had exploded in my hands. She didn't even notice. And there were other moments like that. Little jabs. Snide comments at parties, under her breath, half-masked as sarcasm. He tries, bless his heart, she once told a group of friends when I'd burned the steak. They laughed. I did too. But inside I felt something cave in just a bit. The problem with slow insults is that you get used to them. You start thinking maybe you were the idiot. Maybe you really are lucky she puts up with you. But last night, that wasn't a slow insult. That wasn't something I could excuse or downplay or absorb. That was a public spectacle. Deliberate. Calculated. And when someone shows you what they really think of you in front of a crowd, you don't unsee that. Still, I drove home. Not to make peace. Not to beg. I just wanted to see if maybe she'd meet me halfway. If there was a flicker of the woman I married left in her. When I walked in, the house was quiet. She wasn't in the kitchen, wasn't in the living room. I followed the sound of running water upstairs and found her in the bathroom, rinsing her face, still wearing her dress from the night before. She looked at me in the mirror. No smile. No apology. Just a tight, neutral expression. "Did you sleep somewhere?" she asked, like she was asking about the weather. "Yeah," I said. She grabbed a towel and dabbed her cheek. "Good. You needed to cool off." That was it. No regret. No reflection. Just deflection. I watched her walk past me without another word. And something inside me, something important, went quiet. Not rage. Not sorrow. Just silence. And in that silence, something started to harden. The thing about emotional distance is that it doesn't show up all at once. It's not a door slamming shut. It's a slow, quiet backing away, inch by inch, until there's nothing left between you but air. And that morning, standing in our hallway as she passed by without looking at me, I realized just how far I'd already pulled back. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and just didn't care. Later that afternoon, she came into the kitchen while I was pouring coffee. She was dressed now, fresh makeup, phone in hand, looking like the previous night had been deleted from her memory. About last night, she said casually, like she was referring to a spilled drink at brunch. "You're not still sulking, are you?" I didn't answer. She leaned against the counter, sighing like I was the unreasonable one. "Look, I might have had too much to drink. Things got a little out of hand. It wasn't that serious." I looked at her. She wasn't apologizing, she was explaining. Defending. Minimizing. That's when I knew. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry for the inconvenience it caused. The messiness. The disruption to her otherwise curated image of a perfect relationship. "You threw a glass at me," I said flatly. She rolled her eyes. "It wasn't at you. It was." I don't know, dramatic. You embarrassed me. You were talking like you didn't even know the details of the story right. You always do that in front of my coworkers. She made it sound like a minor slip, like I was the one who needed to get over it. The word dramatic stuck with me, not because she used it, but because she said it like it was a character trait of mine, not hers. And right there in that moment, I saw the blueprint. This had happened before. Not like the glass, no. That was new. But the pattern, the way she hurt me, then recast me as overreactive, difficult, fragile. I'd seen this movie. I'd starred in it a dozen times. But I wasn't reading from that script anymore. I said nothing. Just sipped my coffee, turned, and walked out. It didn't even occur to me to argue. There was no anger left to fuel that fire. Just this eerie calm I'd never felt before. Like watching a fire burn out and knowing you're not going to throw water on it this time. Over the next few days, I stopped trying. I didn't tell her I was working late. I didn't remind her to set the alarm. I didn't ask if she wanted to order dinner or watch something together. I just existed. Quietly. Efficiently. Like a stranger passing through the house he used to call home. She noticed eventually. On Wednesday night, she asked why I hadn't sent her that spreadsheet she usually needed for her Friday meeting. I shrugged. Didn't think you'd want it from someone stupid. That hit. I saw the flicker in her eyes, just for a second. But she masked it quick. You're being childish, she snapped. One bad night, and now you're acting like a victim. I didn't answer. Because I wasn't acting like a victim. I wasn't even trying to get her to see how wrong she was. I was done trying to be seen at all. That weekend, she went out for drinks with Aaron and some of the same friends from the dinner party. She didn't ask if I wanted to come. And I didn't ask where she was going. When she returned after midnight, I was awake in bed, reading, the hallway light casting shadows across the room. She stepped in, expecting me to be asleep, and paused when she saw me. You're not going to ask how it went, she said. Nope. She stood there like she was waiting for a fight that wasn't coming. I turned a page in my book and didn't look up. She didn't know how to handle that. The silence. The indifference. I think that scared her more than any shouting match would have. Because for once, I wasn't begging for reconciliation. I wasn't chasing her approval. I wasn't fighting to be understood. I was just gone. Still physically here. Still drinking the coffee I made. Still locking the door at night. But emotionally, she couldn't find me with a searchlight. The next morning, she tried to close the gap. She made breakfast for both of us for the first time in months. Bacon, eggs, toast, like it used to be. I figured you might be hungry, she said, sliding the plate toward me. I ate in silence. Thanked her. Then left the kitchen and went for a walk without saying where. She tried again that night. Small talk. Jokes. Even a playful brush of her hand on mine when I reached for the remote. But I didn't respond. Not cruelly, just neutrally. And for her, that was worse. She needed the feedback. The drama. The push and pull. But now there was no push. No pull. Just me, standing still, letting her circle a void of her own making. She hadn't hit the bottom yet. Not quite. But I could see her teetering. And she didn't even know I was the one holding the rope and quietly letting go. It was a Thursday afternoon when I got the message. I was at work, half reading emails, half scrolling through my calendar when a name popped up on my phone that made me pause. Julie, one of the guests from that night. Not someone I was particularly close to, more her friend than mine, but she'd always been decent, polite, cordial. Her message was short. Hey, can we talk? It's about what happened the other night. I think you should know something. I stared at it for a moment before typing back. Sure. We agreed to meet after work. Neutral ground. A coffee place downtown neither of us usually went to. She showed up right on time, clutching a tote bag and looking more anxious than I'd expected. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, she said, after the first sip of her drink. I've gone back and forth on it. I nodded, letting her talk. But the way she treated you that night, and what she said after you left, she shook her head. It's been bothering me. I don't like keeping things quiet just because someone tells me to. My chest tightened. What did she say? Julie looked at me carefully, like she was testing to see if I could handle it. She laughed, she said quietly. You walked out, and she barely waited 10 seconds before brushing it off. She said you were probably pouting somewhere, and that you'd come crawling back like you always do. I stayed quiet. She said, and I'm quoting here, he'll be fine. He always makes a big deal out of nothing. He's just sensitive. Julie glanced down, ashamed just to be repeating it. She joked that maybe next time you'll learn not to interrupt her when she's talking. I felt something settle deep in my stomach. Not rage. Not shock. Something worse. Confirmation. The mask had finally slipped, and someone else had seen the face behind it. "I'm sorry," Julie said, setting her cup down. "It's not my place, I know. But I just thought if I were in your shoes, I'd want to know." She was right. I would. And now I did. I thanked her, sincerely, and walked out with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. That night, I didn't confront my wife. I didn't storm into the living room and wave the conversation in her face. I didn't demand answers. No, that's what she expected. She thrived in conflict. She won in conflict. Because every time we fought, I ended up apologizing just to keep the peace, just to get through the night. And every time I did, she carved a little deeper into whatever was left of my pride. But I wasn't giving her that fight. Instead, I started planning. Small, precise moves. I created a new bank account, quietly redirected my paycheck. I started boxing up a few things, a stack of books, some clothes, my hard drive. Just enough. I rented a small storage unit a few miles away. Nothing flashy. Nothing noticeable. Just a place to start peeling my life away from hers. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and chose to ignore it. One morning, she asked why my suit jacket was missing from the hall closet. I told her I'd taken it to the dry cleaner. She nodded and went back to her coffee. I spent the next week untangling what I could, canceling subscriptions, closing shared accounts, gathering paperwork. The kind of tasks you do when you're no longer building a life, but dismantling it. I was calm, distant, focused, and the calmer I became, the more unsettled she got. She'd try small provocations, snide comments, passive-aggressive questions. Once, she tried to bait me into a fight by bringing up something I'd forgotten to do months ago. "You're always forgetting the little things," she said with a smirk. I looked at her and said, "You know what? You're right." That threw her off. She wasn't used to agreement, especially not the kind that came without an ounce of defense. By the second week, she was the one walking on eggshells. She'd reach for my arm when we passed each other, ask if I wanted to watch something together, offer to cook dinner, then do it, even if I didn't respond. And me? I gave her nothing. Not cruelty, not affection, just indifference. Because now I understood something she never wanted me to see. She didn't fear losing me. She feared losing the version of me who stayed no matter how many times she pushed him down. The one who flinched, then forgave. Who swallowed pride for peace. Who believed the problem was his inability to take a joke, instead of her inability to respect a man who loved her. And now that man was gone. In his place stood someone she didn't recognize. Someone who saw through the illusion. Someone who was preparing to disappear without a sound. It happened on a Saturday. She was hosting again, this time a small brunch for her coworkers. "Just a few people from the office," she'd said, waving her hand like it didn't matter. She asked me to pick up fresh fruit and juice from the store that morning. I nodded, grabbed my keys, and left. But I didn't go to the store. I went to the storage unit. It was early, barely past 8, but I moved quickly, loaded the last few bags into the trunk, shut the roll-up door, locked it, and slid the key into my pocket. Then I drove. No music, no stops, no hesitation. When I got home, the house smelled like fresh coffee and the cinnamon rolls she only ever made for guests. She didn't greet me, didn't ask where I'd been. She was too busy arranging pastries on a wooden tray, laughing at something on her phone. Perfect timing. I walked past the kitchen, down the hall, into the bedroom, and placed the letter on the bed. It wasn't long. 3 paragraphs. Calm. Measured. Final. I didn't write it to guilt her, or to get the last word. I wrote it because I knew that when I left, and I was leaving, she'd spin the story. She'd twist it into something convenient, something that made her the victim of my emotional withdrawal or sudden coldness. So I gave her the truth. In writing. No way to misquote it. Then I walked out the front door, down the porch steps, and into the car without a word. Her guests started arriving just as I was pulling out of the driveway. Erin gave a little wave, like nothing was wrong. She had no idea she was walking into the eye of a storm. The last thing I saw in the rearview mirror was her silhouette in the window holding a coffee mug, still smiling. She hadn't read the letter yet. Not yet. I drove to a furnished rental I'd signed for earlier that week. Month-to-month lease. Nothing fancy. But it was clean, quiet, and mine. That afternoon, while she served Eggs Benedict and mimosas to the same people who had laughed at her jokes a month earlier, she walked into our bedroom and found the letter. She didn't call, didn't text, But I know exactly how it played out. Because 3 hours later, I got a call from Julie. Her voice was low, hesitant. "She's a mess," she said, crying, saying she didn't think you'd actually leave. I didn't respond. Julie continued. She read the letter out loud, in front of everyone. She thought it would make people take her side, but it didn't. I let that hang in the air. She kept repeating, "I didn't mean it like that. He's always so sensitive." But no one said anything. It got awkward real fast. Aaron left early. Another pause. Then Julie added, she asked if anyone knew where you were. I didn't say anything. "Thank you," I said quietly. I could hear the sigh on the other end of the line. A sigh of someone who'd watched someone fall off the pedestal they'd built for themselves. When I hung up, I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt free. For the first time in a long time, I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't need to justify my exit. I didn't owe anyone anything. Especially not the woman who could look me in the eyes after throwing a glass at my feet and act like I had overreacted. And she? She had to sit there finally with the weight of her own actions. With the absence of the man who always forgave, always stayed, always folded. And no one was there to hand her the script. But there was another path I could have taken. If I had confronted her that morning, if I'd thrown the letter at her feet and demanded an apology in front of her friends, maybe she would have cried. Maybe she would have said all the right things, put on that mask of remorse she wore so well. I might have believed it. Maybe I would have stayed, just one more time. And that would have been the mistake that broke me. I've often imagined a different outcome, one where I stayed silent forever. No letter, no explanation, just vanished. Let her wonder, let her spiral trying to figure out where it all went wrong. Maybe she'd convince herself I'd met someone else. Maybe that would have been easier for her pride than accepting she was the reason someone stopped loving her. But I didn't disappear. I told the truth. And the truth was enough.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.